Hi, I'm Jason Whitman, and I'm a master's level life coach, pioneer life coach, like 50 years worth. I invented the idea, and a drug and alcohol counselor for a long time. I think most of you know me from my other writings and my book, Designing a Great Life, Time-Tested Prescriptions for the Art of Living, or something like that. Anyway, that's not why I'm here. I've been listening to the news lately, and there's currently a trial going on involving Google and uh, I guess Facebook, and it's about their purposefully designing their program to addict children. And it got me thinking, actually, I was thinking about this before that, but it got me thinking that in a way they're only tackling part of this problem, potential problem. A little background for me. Number one, I've been drug and alcohol free and pretty much every other addiction free for over 48 years. And in my writings, if you care to read them, I've broken down this addiction field a little different than it's normally looked at. I don't think there's any such thing as opioid addiction and amphetamine addiction and marijuana addiction and alcohol addiction. I think they're all basically the same thing, but the parts are different. The classical psychological texts call these addictions a disease, which is unfortunate because it's not a disease. There are basically a couple of different components of what we think of as an addiction. There's physical addiction, like alcohol, marijuana, opioids, etc., amphetamines. There's a physical component, and that component, the body eventually gets used to ingesting this stuff, and then it compensates for it by needing more to get the same high. That's the physical addiction part. That, in a rehab situation, can be cured. I mean, as far as I understand, maybe a month and a half total will cure most physical addictions, all physical addiction. The need for the drug is no longer an issue. So why isn't that good enough? Why do people still have a craving for something? Well, the something is a behavioral problem. What happens once the physical addiction part is gone is purely a behavioral problem. If I have a problem with biting my nails or my cuticles, that's a behavior. And all behaviors can be cured by substituting another behavior in its place. So for the nail biting one, there are a bunch of steps. First, you become aware of the precursors to the addiction, in this case, nail biting. The precursors are, maybe doing this and maybe, this, and eventually cleaning the nails, and eventually your hands in your mouth biting. And the way to eliminate that addiction is to do something else more than the addiction. So noticing these precursors and sitting on your hands until the desire leaves is one way of doing that. For smoking is probably an easier one. The reason why there are 3 months worth of patches has nothing to do with nicotine addiction. Nicotine addiction is over in less than a month. I've smoked for over 10 years when I was a kid, and when I decided to stop, a month later, I had zero nicotine problem. But I did have a problem with the habit of picking this up and putting it to my mouth and looking for a smoke screen to eliminate my social anxieties and all of that. And that took learning a different way of behaving, like taking a nice deep breath and relaxing and doing new things to get through the social anxieties before smoking was no longer a problem. And I quit when I was 21 and I'm 83. So I guess it worked. When it comes to patches, the reason there are 3 months worth of patches is because that puts people 3 months away from the actual physical habit, the physical problem, the habit of picking up a cigarette and doing all of that. And the reason why people fail with patches is because they sneak a puff or two sometime in that 3 months, and their inner mind, which has now gotten used to not smoking, says, oh, we're back to the old program. And the 3-month period starts again. So I'm going through all of this to give some background. My feeling is that if you have a physical addiction, you get rid of it, and then you're left with a behavioral problem, and that's what I just described. It helps, like with an AA type program, that there's a spiritual component which serves the purpose of giving me or the person going through this the comfort of knowing they're not alone in this game, that there's some God, universe, or something that is there to assist them in this journey. Nice to have that, not essential, because behaviors are made and broken every day. So, okay, now we're on to the problem at the moment for Google and Microsoft being accused of setting up this scheme to deal with kids. And I'd like to make this more global, because this is a problem that I recently encountered. I have 48 years clean and sober, and really with no other addictions, physical or otherwise. I sleep well. I handle my anxieties. I look in the mirror. Every time I see myself in the mirror, I say nice things about myself. So I'm in the habit of liking me. I care less what you think about me, other than as a bonus. If just a bonus, it's not something my world rises and falls on other people's opinion, because I have my own good opinions of me. But what has happened, I have noticed in the last probably half year, is that I have become very addicted, slowly but surely, to scrolling on the internet. Now, there's no physical addiction here. This is purely a behavior, but a real strong behavior, whether it's online on my desktop or it's on my little old, I have gotten into what some people call doom scrolling. I don't like the term, other than the fact that doing that is eventually going to wreck the rest of my existence, but or at least to wreck the rest of my productive existence. It's habitual scrolling, and Google and Facebook, in my humble opinion, are guilty as charged because they have developed an algorithm that puts in front of me only the things that I'm interested in. And that's an important element here. If most of what they put in front of me was stuff that was boring to me, I could take it or leave it. But when my inner system knows that the next thing I get to is going to be interesting, and as a bonus, it might be interesting enough to share with somebody who might be interested in it, that becomes a huge addiction. Now, with most addictions, the behavioral part, when the addiction kicks in, we trance out when the addiction kicks in. I have been around people who, as a therapist and as a parent of 13 foster teens and an adopted son, I have noticed that the ones that end up with addictions of one sort or another, usually sexual ones, where they've found somebody online and then need to go and do whatever they do with them. I can tell when that's happening because as a hypnotherapist, I know what trance states look like. And when people are have found somebody online and are now focused on going and having the sex that they were initially interested in other words, what's called a hookup, the eyes glaze over. It's like, I don't know if I can do this, but it's like they're almost staring right through you. Where am I? Well, there's the, like staring right through you. And you're talking to the person and the eyes keep darting towards the door. It's almost like a racehorse waiting to go, and let's get this conversation over with quick so I can get out of here and do what I really want to do. So that getting into a trance state, I think, is a major part of any addiction. So the mind narrows down to whatever is the addictive goal. And I found that when I get on a habitual scrolling, nothing else matters. I can look at the clock, and I've got a huge one that's sitting right next to my computer. It's got a 2-inch, it's got that big of a picture of the time. So I know what time it is. And I realize that I've been scrolling for the last hour or two. That doesn't matter because I am in a trance state, an addictive trance state. And all I can do is look for the next. seen this thing that's highly educated, because remember, Facebook and Google they've got my number. They know what's interesting to me. So, of course, I'm going to watch. I love watching what Shadow and what's her face, the two eagles and Big Bear, Jackie and Shadow, are doing, and whether they have new eggs or whether the ravens got the old eggs, and if they're going to lay new eggs. I'm entranced with that. And I'm entranced with all the things about how music is made and what Paul McCartney is doing this day. And what else do they got me on? Anyway, all of those things. In the sales business, there's a thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. And there's a FOMO involved with this too. If I stop scrolling, I'm going to miss the next interesting thing. This is a serious habit and a serious addiction. And so that's the problem. Now, what is the solution? The solution, I don't think, is going to be one that Google and Facebook are ever going to do, and legislating it would mean you'd have to legislate that they don't have an algorithm, which isn't going to happen, because that algorithm is how they make money. They keep you there and keep putting in interesting things you might want to buy based on past experience of buying, which is part of the same deal. Whether I'm buying a program or I'm buying a product, it's basically the same thing to them. They're keeping me online to do the number. So the answer isn't going to come from anything the companies are being sued for. The answer is going to come from, like all addictive answers, if you're involved in 12-step programs, the first step is what? Understanding that I'm powerless over the habit and that my life has become unmanageable. That's the first step. In this case, I recognize I'm powerless over that algorithm, and spending 2 or 3 hours doing this instead of going to bed, which now makes it 2:30 in the morning, which means I don't get up and start my day until 10 o'clock or noon, so I've lost most of my day. That's the unmanageable part. Once I recognize this, I can then be open for a solution, or in the case of a 12-step program, I become teachable. In this case, since there's nobody I know that's really dealing with this on a therapeutic basis, it's up to me to become inventive as usual, to do it for myself. My becoming teachable has set me up with pretty strict rules as to what I can do online. So for me, the answer has been, in the last month or two, that number one, if I'm going to the bathroom, if I have the phone with me, it's got to be out of arm's reach. Otherwise, I will sit there until there are barnacles on my rear end from sitting there scrolling after there's no reason to be in the bathroom anymore. I hope this isn't too much information, but it's important. So that's what I do in that case. I've also made sure that if I have to be on the phone, on Facebook, which I live on. I mean, I like Facebook, and I like it to stay in touch with my friends, etc. But there are things I know I can't do anymore. On the top of the Facebook screen, there are all those little um, uh, people's story, their little YouTube videos or TikTok videos. I can't scroll on them. I can't get on them because if I do the one that my friends have, their little video about their new apartment, the problem is that Facebook immediately jumps the algorithm back in, and before you can get out of it, there's a new interesting thing to look at. So with those, I just can't click on them. And if I am clicking on something that I'm really interested in, I have to have the discipline that once what I am looking at is over with, I click out of there before anything else can appear. Because something else, by God or by Google, is going to appear. So in this case, the way to get rid of this habit is to do another one more. And the other one more is to stop doing this and get on with life. So instead of sitting there doom scrolling, I go check my emails and I go do all the other business things that I ought to be doing. And every once in a while, I can give myself a very, very small window to look at interesting things. And I set a timer. 15 minutes later, I'm done. But even that has its risks. Because if I scroll on something and it captures my attention, it's real easy to get in that addictive trance state. And at that point, all of my good intentions are out the window, and holy crow, it's 3 a.m. again. So to sum this up, this is a very real addiction. Its reward is that all our desire for information and good news, and it just occurred to me, people who get involved in this exact same thing but on porn sites, whether that's Grindr for gay guys or whatever that one is for straight guys. What is it? Anyway, all of those, it's the same thing. It's going one after another, after another, after another. Pornhub is another one, after another, after another. And all of a sudden it's 5 a.m. So this applies to all scrolling, whether it's feeding addiction, feeding lewd stuff, or it's feeding inquisitive stuff. And the basic answer is the same answer as all the AA answers. The first thing we do is stop. Period. And even with physical addictions, when they're bad enough, until all the rest of the 12 steps happen, in the very beginning, there is at least a limited ability to say enough's enough and to stop the behavior. People can attribute that to God helping them or whatever, but in the beginning of all cures of addictions, the first thing is we have at least a little bit of self-control that says, stop. And then look for a way to make that progressively longer and longer term until the desire for the addiction has lifted. So hopefully this isn't so jumbled that you don't get it. And I think that's it. So a very, very quick summary of the summary is acknowledge that there's a problem. Know that nobody else is going to do this unless somebody physically comes in and turns your computer and your phone off. And that you got to get pissed enough with yourself wasting all this time to just say, stop, and shut this crap off on your own, and then do something else to be more fulfilling and get on with life. So hopefully that helps. I pardon for the rambling, but that's it off the top of my head. Any questions or any suggestions? You can email me, Jason S, the number S, the letter S, the number 4, the letter M.com, S4MM.com. I nearly said my old one, Jason@almostanywhere.com, but that doesn't exist anymore. Don't use it. Or you can call me. My number's on my website. Website is stage2recovery.com. And that's it. Make it a wonderful day. Bye-bye.